Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be working on this wreath and we're going to be making some shabby flowers, and this Warm and Natural is what we're going to wrap this wreath in. This fabric is almost like quilt batting, a cross maybe between quilt batting and felt, but it's great for wrapping these wreaths because it is thick enough to cover it good and almost gives it somewhat of a padding. But the reason I'm doing this video is because a couple of videos ago I did a wreath in with one of my vignettes, and I got some comments that my camera position was really bad, and absolutely I agree it was. So I'm just going to do this close up so that it's clear how to make this. And so this one I'm just going to take more time on this wreath and give you some better views. And I'm sorry that I struggle with the camera. That's one of my biggest struggles. But I've just cut this fabric in strips. It really doesn't matter how thick. I just guesstimated here probably an inch and a half. If you go too thick, it's not as easy to wrap. I mean, you would wrap it smooth, more quickly, obviously, but it just wouldn't have as neat of a look. So I wouldn't go much bigger than these strips that I've cut. And this Warm and Natural can also be coffee stained, and usually I do coffee stain it, but I didn't have any that was coffee stained and dry, so I could have coffee stained it, but then I would have had to wait on it to dry. So I'm just using the white here, which works because my colors here is going to be white and then more of a tan natural colors here. Okay, so now that I have this form wrapped, then we have a good base to build our flowers on. So I'm going to make a few different types of flowers here, and a couple of them I've done in previous videos, but I don't think I've ever done any really close up. So if you saw any of those other videos and you had a hard time getting it, then hopefully this will help you. Now with this, I've just cut this strip, and you can go wider with your strip if you want. It might make it a little bit easier, but this is the size that I wanted. And what you're going to do is you're just going to glue the edges together, but you want an open tube here, so you don't want to glue the whole sides together. It's a little bit hard to see here, but I'm just going on that very edge, and then I'm going to glue that. So essentially you've got like a little straw or cylinder or whatever, and then we're going to take the end that isn't glued, and we're just going to cut little notches, or little slits rather, and you have to be really careful, which is why I'm using these little bitty scissors here. You have to be really careful to not cut all the way through. You're just going up to that hot glue. And one thing that helps is you can kind of feel that hot glue when you get to it. So just be careful not to cut through it, because if you do, then you're obviously going to have to start over. So I'm just cutting this whole little cylinder down to the end, and then it'll be ready to start making our flower. And this is a very easy flower to make, and actually to me a very enjoyable flower. So we're just going to take our hot glue, and we're going to just glue where we want the outer edge of the flower. And then we're going to kind of just go all the way around in the shape that we want our flower. And this will be our outer edge. So whatever size you want that flower, then that's where you want to put the glue, just to the inside where it will be gluing. And then once you've got that outside of the flower built, then you're going to go in a little bit more with the next layer. You're just going to keep going. You don't have to cut it here. And so you bring that in one more layer. And then you'll do the same thing. You'll do another layer just inside that one. And then you could stop here and maybe put a button in the middle of it and make it a daisy. But this one, I'm going to make it more of, I guess, what I would call a zinnia. And just kind of fill this whole thing in. So you just keep gluing until you run out of space. And then when you run out of space, then you just clip that off and glue that down. And it just builds that whole center and makes a really pretty flower. You can do this with other fabrics as well. I'm just, because I'm already working with the Warm and Natural, I just made it out of that. But you can use almost any kind of fabric to make this flower. And that piece that I cut off, I'm just forming that into a center. So instead of gluing it laying down, I'm just going to keep gluing it together, standing straight up. And this way I can either use this as the center to a flower, or I can cut the width of it down from, or the height of it down, I guess, and make a small flower. I'll show you later what I mean by that. It'll make more sense. But so a lot of times I use these just as a center of certain flowers. Okay, now for the next flower, we're going to make a rosette. And I've just cut or ripped strips of tea towel here that I've coffee stained ahead of time. And now I want to put that glue dot just in the very center of where I want that. Now I tied a knot on the end just to give me something to work with. And you can either let that end kind of stick up above your flower, or you can cover it up while you're doing this wrapping. So now what we're going to do is we're twisting one way and then gluing it down. And then I'm just going to let mine stick up. And we're twisting and gluing. And ever so often, you'll twist the other way, just like I did there. And you're just going to keep going around and around in a circle. Now, if you do this tight, your flower is going to be shorter. But if you kind of keep your fabric more loose, then it'll be a fuller flower. But you just keep doing this until you get this flower the size that you want it. And this will make a real pretty rose. And you just kind of play with this rose as you go. If you want it to be more full, then you just kind of push it up tighter against the one before. You don't pull your strip tighter, but you just kind of push it up tighter against the rose, and that kind of pushes that up. But just kind of play with it and see what look you like. But I was trying to make mine a little fuller here, so I'm just kind of really pushing it in toward the center, and just kind of twisting back and forth a lot to create some dimension. And these roses can be made out of a number of different fabrics, so you can use just scraps of old clothing if you don't have fabric. You can also twist two different types of fabric together, and you'll kind of see each one throughout your rose. And you can create so many looks with these flowers. So I didn't show it there, but I just kind of secured that end there down, and then that rose was finished. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I'm going to use this Warm and Natural fabric, and this will make a chunkier rose. So I'm just going to kind of show you what that one looks like. So I just glue my knot down here in the center of this little doily. If you don't have a doily this size, then just take a maybe a tablecloth or some sort of doily that you can kind of cut down. Just cut a circle out of it, and that way you've got that little base in the back. But now I'm just going to build my little flower in the center of this the same way I built the other one. It's just this one's going to be chunkier, and we'll just kind of fill in this whole center until you just have those scalloped edges showing from that doily. And that's just another look that you can give your flowers. If you know how to make these flowers, then you can just add them to so many different projects. And I'll show you a couple in at the end of this video, things that you can use these on. And you see how that's just kind of building that up chunkier and just adding more height to it. So it just gives it a completely different look. Guys, I want to say thank you so much for supporting my channel and all the very sweet comments that I just love reading. And I try to answer all of them. I know at some point that might get harder, but right now I really try to respond to each comment. But I'm really amazed at how quickly my channel is growing, and I feel so blessed to have so many of you to support me, and you just don't know how much I appreciate you watching my videos and commenting and sharing and subscribing. I just feel overwhelmed with your support. And see how beautiful that flower is with just that little bit of lace behind it and the height of that thicker fabric. Okay, so now we're going to go back to this other flower where we glued that edge together and cut the slits. And we're going to make this one a little different than we made the other one. We're still going to glue that together, still going to cut the slits, and still going to build the flower on the outside with it. But with this one, we're going to combine that flower with the little rosette. And so we'll have this on the outside, and then on the inside we'll have that rosette. And that gives us another look for our flowers. So just like with the other one, you're going to decide where you want your flower, and you're going to decide the size that you want the flower, and just glue that outside. And so this will be your outside layer. And I never like to leave it with just one layer. I feel like at least 2 layers helps it look better, because you'll get too much separation in your petals. I feel like if you just do the one, you could, and I've seen it done, but I just prefer a couple layers, and then the rosette in the center. But just like with the other one, you're going to go in just a little bit on that second row, and then and now we're just going to take another type of fabric. This is a tea towel also, but it is not dyed or not coffee stained, and we're just going to build that little rosette in the middle. If you like a lot of color, just play with colors here. You could make some really pretty spring flowers using some pastel colors or some yellows and greens. But again, I just want mine to be neutral. So I'm just going to build that rosette until all of this center is covered. You don't want any of your fabric that is not slit showing. So you want to take it all the way up to the slits. And remember with these to twist a little bit one way and twist it back the other way. Sometimes I do every other one. I'll twist one way and glue it, and then twist the other way and glue it, just like I did there. But sometimes I'll twist a couple and then do, it's hard to keep up with sometimes which way you twist it, and it really isn't that big a deal. Just try to twist kind of back and forth. And then there is that little flower. Okay, now this next flower, it's just going to be another rosette, but I'm just showing you what it looks like using a different fabric. And this is just ripped strips from an old lace window panel. Now, some laces you would have to cut, but this particular one was very easy to rip. And when I can rip it, I like to rip the fabric because it adds more wispiness to your flower, and it just makes it look more realistic. But I'm just showing you here that you can use a number of different fabric to make your flowers with. And then you just keep adding around these flowers until you're happy with the size and shape of your flower, and then just cut it off and glue it down. Now I did add some more flowers to this, and I'll show you one more, but I'm not going to show you all of them because it's the same process. I just wanted to add some different flowers kind of trailing down and getting smaller. The last one here is I'm just showing you just with this another one of these little miniature doilies, and I put a rosette on that one, and I thought that's a pretty look also. So after I finish with all my flowers, gluing them to the wreath, then I'm going to make a shabby bow to go on top. And here all I'm doing is ripping pieces of fabric, cutting pieces of fabric, using some lace, using even scraps that I wouldn't normally use. You just want a lot of different types of fabric here, and you want to rip them relatively thin. And here I'm just trying to decide what length I want them, because I was trying to decide what size I wanted my shabby bow. And what we're going to do here is just cut some strips that length, and we want several because we want this to be full, and we want several different types because we want to give this bow some character. And then after we cut several pieces this length, and there's no exact number, you just whatever you think is going to be fluffy enough for you, but you do want several. And then after we get these cut for the bow, then I like to have some longer pieces trailing down. So then I'm just going to cut some that are longer that I can use as my, I guess you would call it a tail for the bow. I mean the bow. So, and you don't have to have as many of those. You want several, but you don't have to have as many of those as you do for your shabby bow. So once we get all these cut, then we're just going to lay them in a crisscross pattern, and we're going to alternate how they lay on top of each other. Like, you don't want to put all of one color together. You want to kind of alternate your textures and your colors. It doesn't have to be exact because this is a shabby bow and you're going to kind of fluff it after you make it anyway. But it does help to kind of separate those fabrics. So just kind of alternate them as you lay them. And like I said, you're just going to be laying them in a crisscross pattern, and just kind of alternate your textures and colors, and just put however many you think. I don't even know how many I used here. I just kind of keep adding them until I feel like it's going to be full enough. And after you make these a few times, you'll get more of a feel for how many you need. And it looks like I'm using a lot here, but this is literally just scraps. So once you get it crisscrossed together, then we're going to tie them together in the center in a knot. And then we'll do the same thing with our long strips. We'll tie them together in the center, and I don't even bother layering those in any kind of pattern. I just tie a string in the middle of those and tie those to the back of this bow. And then you can tie this on. I didn't tie mine on. I just hot glued mine on where I wanted it. And I like for my bow to set at an angle at the top. I don't like for it to be straight down. But that's just a matter of preference. You can put yours on the top, on the bottom, whatever you choose. And then I just glued one of these strips to the back to make me a hanger. Now this is another item that you can use these bows on, and I don't know if you've ever crafted with socks, but there's so many things that you can do with socks, and I just bought these at the Dollar Tree, so it's a very inexpensive project. And I just cut the top of this sock off where I thought it needed to be, and it doesn't have to be exact because we're just gonna, this is a thin sock, so we're just gonna leave it on the bottom here, and this candle will set just fine. I won't have to glue that or anything, and then it'll be removable. But I just put that finished edge on the top here, and then I'm gonna take a piece of lace and glue all the way around that top to dress it up and keep it from looking like a sock, because I love that you can make these out of socks, but I don't want someone to look at it and know that it's a sock. But I love these little battery operated candles, but I like, they're just so plain, and I like to dress them up a little bit. And this is a very, very simple way to dress them up. Another thing that you can do with these socks is put them on a jar. And you can put them just kind of at the bottom of the jar like this. You can cut a strip for the middle and then put one of your flower embellishments on that. You can cover the whole jar and leave, just kind of turn that top inside the jar. You don't have to cut or glue or anything. And just put you one of your little shabby flowers or a few shabby flowers on that, and that's a very quick, easy way to dress up a jar. But I was just going to show you on this candle here how easy this is. And like I said, this same technique can be done on jars, and I'll show you some of those in the end finished, but I'm not going to do that on camera here. But once we add our little shabby flower, this will be such a cute little embellishment for this candle. And like I said, you can do the same thing on jars or a number of items actually. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that I've inspired you to try some of these roses. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great evening. God bless you and your family.